Thanks, Jimmy, for that introduction, and thank you for all who have come to attend this talk. It is about heritage oil and its work in PNG, and it's about the opportunities that the team have created in the PPL 437 and 676 area. Way forward. Is it the green button? No, it's the green button. Okay, this is the location of the licenses. You can see that 437 and 676 are located up the northwestern end of the production area. The licenses are between between Elevala Ketu. I'm trying to get... Sorry, I can't get the laser to work. They're located between the Elevala and Ketu discoveries and the Pinyang field. There are a number of very large discoveries that have been made within the area, and what we're going to present here is the opportunities that we see immediately adjacent to those discoveries. Heritage have been involved in PNG for 12 years, and they have had considerable experience both in drilling and in seismic acquisition since their arrival. They've spent, in this licence alone, 15.5 million. Where are they based? They're based in London, and they have production of 40,000 barrels of oil a day out of Nigeria, so they're certainly more significant than any company I've worked for the last 12 years or 15 years. They also operate several exploration opportunities in Africa, but we are going to focus today within the PNG sector up around Pinyang. They've got plenty of experience, and we look forward to the opportunities that we're developing in PNG. They entered PNG in 2013. They farmed into Kina's assets, 437, 337. They drilled 2 wells, one of which we're showing, Quila, which we spudded in 2015, and the seismic operations that were carried out. I don't think that was in our PPL 437, I think it's further to the east. But the important thing is they embraced the technology. We looked at nodes for seismic, and we looked at onshore drilling rigs for the wells. You'll notice that's an onshore that was mobilised from Brisbane. We took it in, drove it by road to the location, and then supported the rig with no helicopter support. It saved a lot of money. Okay, what are we looking at in terms of our play now in 437 and 676? Primarily, we're looking at the traditional clastic play, the yellow-green striped interval of the reservoir sequences that we've obviously all familiar with in PNG. The source rocks sit below them, and then we have the good Yeru seal, the brown-coloured rock that's shown on the strat column over on the right. The interesting thing about this is you notice that there's a major unconformity that's related to the Coral Sea opening. And what I'll demonstrate in a moment is the impact of that unconformity on both the reservoir and the source rocks as you move to the south and the east. Another important takeaway is where we're located with respect to the Basavi Arch, which is central to the second slide there. The Basavi Arch is a hinge. It impacts the play types across the basin, and I'll show you how it's impacted with the aid of a cross-section. The licenses you can see with respect to the reservoir, the Jurassic and late Cretaceous reservoirs, the late Jurassic and early Cretaceous reservoirs. You can see how close the actual 676 licence is. It's within 2 kilometres of the Pinyang field. There's no risk on reservoir, no risk on source, no risk on charge. The key uncertainty is structural integrity. This is a fantastic diagram. I really like this. Bromman produced this for us a year or two ago, but it still tells a really salient story. When you go over to the west towards Indonesia, you've got the cow trough. The cow trough developed in the early part of the tertiary, and you can see then that anything that was generated in the cow trough during the period of maturation there would have migrated south towards the Australian plate and southeast towards Ellabala Ketu and on towards the Basavi Arch. However, there is a change midway through the tertiary towards the late Miocene, Pleistocene. If I refer to the second slide, you can see where the fields are in relation to the Cecilia Trough, immediately to the west of the Basavi Arch. Penyang's well up dip of the Cecilia Trough, and may not even be charged from there, I don't know. It may have come actually from the cow trough. But the important thing is all the charge up dip of the Cecilia Trough, immediately north of that blue section, is good, liquids-rich gas that's coming out of the Cecilia Trough, migrating into PPL 676, and then will migrate towards Penyang. So any closure that we can generate between the trough and Penyang becomes immediately prospective. These are the prospects and leads. The blue outline is the combined area of, I think it's about 2,600 square kilometres. It encroaches almost onto the Penyang field. The yellow blobs are the prospects and leads that we see within our currently held acreage. The yellow hatch shading shows the outcrop of the Toro sand, and then we highlight the Strickland Gorge. Why have I highlighted it, or why did Bron highlight it? Because it demonstrates granite outcrop, well, the full Mesozoic sequence sitting above it, involved in the structure. So that whole anticlinal area has been basement involved. Furthermore, we know Penyang is basement involved. It's intersected basement in the field. So if you start to invoke basement involvement in most of your structuring to the south of Penyang towards Ellabala Ketu, then you can at least have some confidence that the structuring is somewhat less complex, but it will also involve your reservoir sequence. And I think that's important when you consider the great uncertainty you face in the thrust fold belt further to the southeast. The other point that Bron made when we were talking about this was the involvement of the granite basement. Most of these wells are underpinned by granite. When you go further to the east and the south, you get into a Triassic fabric, and that may have some impact on the architecture of the folding and faulting within the major fold belt as you go south and east of Hydes. Now this is the geoseismic section we've pulled together, and it runs effectively from the southeast all the way across to Penyang. The red line is an interpretation from seismic and well data of basement. The yellow is the top of the reservoir sequence. The green is the top of the seal sequence. The blue is the top of the limestone. What you see is a hinge that separates the south from the north. That hinge is the Basavi Arch. The Basavi Arch is an ancestral feature. You can see it Langia being the highest point there. It's silicified. The reservoir has been completely stuffed by silicification. We know the same problem occurs further to the north at Nama and Siphon. And I believe there's been a paleo-migration pathway that runs from the cow trough up there that has caused the silicification event. The later structures are not necessarily impacted by that silicification, to the point even where we have an early structure there at Ellabala, You can see it's early, shallow basement, drape over the actual, of the reservoir over the feature. No silicification of the reservoir. Then you drop down into the very late form Cecilia Trough. You can see that the limestone's physically deformed at Pinyang, and you've got a very thick seal, reservoir and source sequence that's been involved in that structuring, and it's happened very recently. So that's the key thing that we're trying to demonstrate with the prospects and leads here, is that we've got late structuring. If we can demonstrate westerly closure, dip or fault, then we've got a good chance of finding something here because the seal's intact and we've got good charge. In PPL 437, we've had a longer history there. It's about 12 years. And we've defined the Melissa prospect. The yellow blob there that shows the, if you like, the paleo closure at Melissa. The larger closure is fault-dependent closure, and you see a fault to the south there, which we invoke as defining a much larger closure but much higher risk. It has stacked reservoir potential. It sits down dip of Nama, which is the closure that's just on the far right-hand side. I beg your pardon, not your left, the far left-hand side of that image. Nama is silicified. Ketu, Elevala Tingu are not, and I believe they're protected from that silicification event that ran through this hinge heading up towards the Basabi Arch. We think that the Melissa structure is prospective for quite wet, with wet gas, as based on the Ketu and Elevala fields, which are 60 barrels per million cubic feet. So it does offer a very attractive target in the event of an Elevala development. But the key uncertainty really is the size, and at the moment we consider it a little high risk to drill at this point in time. So what we've done, we've acquired 676, which was awarded last year, and we're developing a whole series of larger prospects between Melissa and Pinyang to the north. These are the seismic lines that run over the various features near Melissa. They all run from, on the left-hand side, southeast to northwest. You can see Elevala as a pretty significant drape feature, the red reflector being basement, the yellow being top reservoir, and then there's plenty of green there below the limestone sealing the structure, so there's no problem with seal. Every single feature that we see is dependent on westerly closure. In the case of Melissa, we've got westerly dip closure. In the case of Stanley, there's dip closure to the west. Ketu, fault closure, and Elevala also has westerly fault-defined closure. Now, what about the prospects that we see north of Melissa and north of Ketu? That map that's on the left defines some late form structures that were mapped by Chevron through our crop mapping. You can see Black River East. I'm not sure that they recognised Parry as a structure at the time. And we focused in on those because once we realised that the late form structures were being charged out of the Cecilia Trough, which is immediately to the northeast of the prospects, and it charges Juha, we felt that was a good address to start looking between the Trough and Pinyang. We've identified a series based on seismic of yellow polygons that we've defined up in the northeast as Parry. We've got Black River East in the centre of the image, Black River. They're the ones that we're going to hone in on and develop. We have the benefit of the legacy seismic, but what we're lacking is the northwesterly control that we need to define the prospect, and we also lack sufficient control to determine the attitude of the structure as we climb towards Pinyang. This is the Pinyang structure. Blue is the limestone, green is the shale, and then Elevala is the yellow at the top of the sequence, red basement. There's 500 metre columns present in this field. Fault seal is working, plenty of good shale. And what's more, the structures occurred yesterday. They're not long-term structures, but they still host a hydrocarbon of 500 plus metres. Good reservoir, so it's got all the ingredients for large success. This is what we're mapping around Parry. We can identify the red reflector as basement, yellow is the top of the reservoir, again good thick seal in the Yeru shale. Great, the top of the carbonate's relatively straightforward. What's less straightforward is the attitude of the frontal thrust at Parry. We're still working on that. But because of basement involvement at Strickland Gorge and basement involvement at Piang, we're pretty sure the basement will be involved here and will include the reservoir in the structure. You can see the Parry anticline on map form, and we've got all of the limestone data in there which we'll use to help define the closure. So in summary, what we're looking at here is a really neat address which is between Elevala, Ketu in the south and Pinyang in the north. We've got Parry, we've got Black River and Black River East that we like. We need to generate, we need to actually demonstrate the seal and the fault seal to the west, and that will be our primary objective. All our commitments are met, but we do need to accelerate the work in here, and we are looking for a partner to come and help us with that, define the size, or at least contribute towards the seismic as we try and define a drilling location somewhere between Parry and Black River. So in essence, we've been here for 12 years. We've been up a fairly steep learning curve. We have experience at operating within PNG successfully. We've drilled wells, we've shot seismic, and we believe we can demonstrate some truly significant prospects resident between Elevala and Pinyang that will have impact for any company that wants to join us on this particular endeavour. So thank you for your attention. I'm quite excited about Heritage's approach to what they're doing here, and I look forward to talking to people if they want to come and join us on this in this exercise. Thank you very much.